What a month it's been with Didi being delisted and then fears of Alibaba, Tencent, and others also being delisted at feverish levels. It's important to acknowledge, guys, that so much has happened over this past month and it's come at us from multiple directions. So the purpose of this video is to provide a refresher of all the key events that have taken us to where we currently are and what we can look forward to in 2022 as it relates to the fears of Chinese names being delisted. You're watching More Money? Let's get it. It's been a crazy month, guys, with Didi being delisted and then the fears of Alibaba, Tencent, and others also being delisted being at feverish levels. In situations like this where the news has been coming at us so fast, I like to pause and just take a breath and review what has transpired to ensure that I haven't missed anything. So let's do that in this video. In December of 2020, during the last weeks of his administration, former President Donald Trump signed a law aimed at removing foreign companies from US exchanges if they failed to comply with American auditing standards for 3 years in a row. And here's the part that a lot of people may be missing. The rules also required that firms need to prove to the SEC that they are not owned or controlled by an entity of a foreign government and to name any board members who are Chinese Communist Party officials. In March of 2021, the shares of dual-listed Chinese companies fell after US security regulators adopted measures that would kick foreign companies off American stock exchanges if they did not comply with US auditing standards. And you might wonder, why was the reaction a little bit delayed? And I think really the reaction was a bit delayed was because a lot of investors thought that the US and the Biden administration would be a bit more cooperative towards China and things would be easier, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And then in late November, two things happened, starting with the events on November 26th. Chinese regulators asked Didi Global Inc.'s top executives to devise a plan to delist from US exchanges as it seemed like there were government data security concerns. And then 7 days later, on Friday, December 3rd, Didi said that it would immediately start the process of delisting from the New York Stock Exchange and pivot over to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Now, if you guys remember, the Chinese regulators did suggest that Didi delay its IPO until it resolved its data security issues. So Beijing's decision to target Didi was widely seen as punishment for its decisions to go public overseas, and the company became a poster child for China's efforts to rein in data security risks with its technology companies. In the weeks after the IPO, Chinese authorities proposed that companies with data on more than 1 million users seek approval before listing overseas. This, of course, sent all the Chinese names lower, but I really believe that Didi was targeted because they listed when they were specifically told not to. But that being the case, this kicked off the second key event that occurred in late November, which was the Chinese regulators coming out and making statements at a conference. Shen Bing from the China Securities Regulatory Commission stated that we do not think that delisting of Chinese firms from the US market is a good thing either for the companies, for global investors, or Chinese-US relations. We are working very hard to resolve the auditing issue with the US counterparts. The communication is currently smooth and open. There is a risk of delisting of these companies, but we are working very hard to prevent it from happening, he added. Now, Ashley Alder, the CEO of the Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission, did speak to the US and China political tensions and did explain that it's politics that can be the reason why a solution is prevented. And she went on to say, sometimes politics can interrupt technical solutions that are sensible and achievable, and I pick up a degree of political attitude when within the US establishment that is not necessarily conductive to a better outcome. So in my opinion, guys, those are strong words that could suggest that a solution may not be reached, but I'm still in the camp where I think it gets resolved. Also, as I said before on this channel, I really don't care if they're delisted or not. You can just convert your shares into Hong Kong listed shares or trade them over the counter if your brokerage allows you to. Alibaba isn't issuing shares to bring in new capital anytime soon, so there's no material change to the company's intrinsic value as a result of them getting delisted, in my opinion. Now, with that said, on December 1st, Bloomberg announced that China is planning to ban companies from going public on foreign stock markets through variable interest entities, according to people familiar with the matter, closing what they refer to as a loophole being used by the country's technology industry to raise capital from overseas investors. Now, the timeline matters here because the Bloomberg report came 6 days after the Reuters report came out, where the Chinese regulators were seeking to avoid US delistings of Chinese firms. So if China just came out and said that they were looking to avoid delistings, why would they then turn around and ban foreign listings through variable interest entities 6 days later? Something seemed off to me, and I discussed it as such on this channel, as I believe that someone had the incorrect information here. If Bloomberg was going to make such a claim, they likely should have provided a source to provide their reporting with some credibility. But note that even in this report, it did clarify that it's unclear if that would mean that a delisting of the most sensitive firms would occur. And after this, the Chinese securities regulators just went off to set the record straight. A few days later, on December 5th, it was reported that the Chinese Securities Regulatory Commission fully refuted the reports of a potential Chinese variable interest entity ban. They did this by stating that reports by overseas media outlets on so-called incoming Chinese regulator ban on companies using variable interest entity structure were completely wrong. They went on to state that relevant authorities in China have always been open and fully respect Chinese companies' independent choices of overseas listings in compliance with relevant laws and regulations. Then, if that wasn't enough, late on Christmas Eve, the China Securities and Regulatory Commission gave us a wonderful Christmas gift and published draft rules for filings by companies seeking offshore listings. In the press release associated with these draft rules, the CSRC reiterated that overseas listings have played a positive role in supporting Chinese companies, and they are important because they allow China to integrate into the global economy. That to me demonstrates that the company is open for business and they are looking to create the process necessary to get there. This runs completely counter to the Bloomberg report suggesting that there would be a VIE listings ban. The CSRC also reiterated that both they and other relevant government authorities in China fully respect the nation's companies' choices for listing venues, and that attitude is not going to change anytime soon. So once again, that largely puts to bed any speculation that a ban on foreign VIE structure type listings are coming. Finally, guys, what I believe to be the most important statement in that release is if Chinese companies are complying with domestic laws and regulations, companies with VIE structures are eligible to list overseas after filing with the CSRC. So once again, guys, I do have to say any claim on an expected ban on VIE listings is unsubstantiated. And the reports calling for it should state just that. But let's be clear, guys, the situation with the US regulators does have the potential to not be worked out. Personally, I don't care. As the shares can just be converted to Hong Kong listed shares, it doesn't change the intrinsic value of your shares. Also, guys, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. I do my absolute best to bring you non-hype, research-focused content. And with your subscription, YouTube extends the reach of the content, which allows us to help more people. Also, guys, it's important that you understand what Alibaba has said throughout their Investor Day presentations. And if you've missed any of those, don't worry, guys. I have the whole Investor Day presentation summarized right here.